it's going to be hard to make a change, especially a big one. But like, as someone who came into this field with pretty much nothing, it's so incredibly empowering now, a year later, to look back and see how amazing like my progress has been and how much growth I've been able to do in such a short amount of time.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they use data to solve the world's problems, highlighting some careers out there that you might not think are data related. And as always, we have fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So with us today, we have Becca Goodman. How are you today, Becca?
Doing good. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you here. So we start out our shows by understanding people's origin stories. So if you could, please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah. So actually almost to the day is when I made a switch into data. It was literally this week that
Nice.
happened. So I celebrated 1 year with my company on the 15th of August, which was very exciting. And I got to go for delicious lunch, which is obviously the most important part. But yeah, it was a huge change for me because I started out my career at 22 as an elementary school teacher. I loved it. I had never dreamed of doing anything else except for being a teacher ever since I was a kid. I mean, I'm sure that's pretty much the general story of anyone who's been a teacher, is that it's not like something that just kind of like falls into your lap usually. It's generally like you have this like massive drive and just calling to this field of like, you are a teacher, and it's just, that's who you are, that's who you're meant to be. And mine kind of kicked in when I was 6.5. My brother was born, and from pretty much the moment that he was able to like start babbling, we were downstairs in the basement playing teacher, right? Playing school. He was learning his ABCs, his 1, 2, 3s. This was literally my destiny. Like, for years when I was growing up, everyone would be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was always like, I want to be a vet. I want to be a whatever. And then everyone was like, really? And then eventually when I was like, yeah, wait, no, I don't want those things. I want to be a teacher. My mom was like, yeah, I was surprised that it took you this long to make that connection, because about how many hours you spent in the basement with Evan teaching him all of these things. I mean, he went into, preschool and kindergarten well prepared, very well prepared. I'm pretty sure he could like write his name by preschool, which is not super developmentally appropriate in today's world. But, I mean, when you've got one-on-one attention from your sister who's going to drill it into your head, you pretty much learn how to do it.
Yeah.
So generally, when people enter into the field of education, they have this idea that this is their forever career. It's going to be something that they are doing until they retire, right? I mean, I got hired at 22 in my first teaching job as a 3rd grade teacher. And I was like, yep, I'm going to be here until I'm 68 and can retire. And the universe had some different plans for me because I had some changes happen in my career. I ended up going to a different school after teaching for 4 years, and we had moved, and it just made more sense for me to be in a different district. And then I spent another 4 years there. And at my time in my second district, I had my daughter, and that really had changed a lot of my life expectations and what I knew I had wanted. It was a huge deal to me because I didn't know what was the right choice for me to make. If it was going to be, power through and continue on with teaching, even though I was having a really hard time balancing the two of being a new mom and being a teacher. That was a huge internal struggle for me. I mean, I spent hours talking to all of my trusted people, being like, I don't know what's the right choice for me. This is my calling. This is my, my lifeblood. But then I would look at my daughter and I was like, but I can't come home and just keep working after work and not get to spend those precious moments with her when she was so little, and, just enjoying like all those little snuggles and cute things that babies do, and not so cute things that babies do as well. But, that's another story. So I was talking with my dad actually in the summer of 2022 last year. And I was like, I have this huge dilemma. I just kind of need your advice. What would you do if you were in my shoes? And he was like, well, if you're looking for something that you can have more flexibility with, it's like, why don't you start looking into Power BI? And I was like, okay. And, he was telling me a little bit about what he does as a data developer and Power BI architect, because he wears a couple different hats. And I was like, I just don't really understand like what you're doing. So I shadowed him for a bit and just kind of saw his process, started learning a little bit about like what kinds of things were the expectations. And I was like, it's still really challenging for me. Like, I don't know that I could step up to this plate. And he was like, I really think you could. I think that you've got the skills, you've got the drive for this. Yes, it's going to be a huge change. I mean, going from completely different careers. He's like, but I really think you could do this. And, you'd have that flexibility that I think you're looking for. And I said, okay, well, you know what? Send me some resources. So he sent me some videos. And I watched them and I found a couple things that I could use to do some like practical application. And I was like, okay, I could start to see myself understanding these things, being able to kind of predict what was going to be next in their steps. So that was really encouraging for me, enough for me to, in pretty early August, make a choice and put in my resignation, which, wow, was probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my entire life, because I was going from something that like, I know this really, really well to I don't know this at all. And that was terrifying, because as a teacher, you use data, of course. I mean, you're still surrounded by it, but it's not the process of creating it, right? Well, not really creating it, but using it in a way that's creating the reports that people are going to see. You're usually just the background of the consumer of the reports, and then being able to apply those. So it was huge. And on top of that, when I was learning all of these things, I also had my daughter. She was about 9 months old. And so naturally, separation anxiety happens at that time. So literally I had, my daughter here, my computer mouse here, and was spending, 8 hours a day learning Power BI from Microsoft, from any resource that I could find online. I spent, so many hours looking up things. I have like a whole like bank of resources that I have found, because I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep like a running list of them, because like I found what worked for me. And being a teacher, we are very much like, well, if we ever need to come back to it, we need a file folder of this. That's nice. But I'm the virtual file folder. I'm not the paper copy. So that made the transition a little easier. So I was doing a lot of these readings with Microsoft, and with a 9-month-old, that was really challenging, because they write usually to a level of someone that has this background knowledge. And so, I was tossing in things about things I was like, I have never heard of this before. So I was like, I need to find something else that's going to help me learn a little bit more about this. So I stumbled on DataCamp, and I used DataCamp, the program, and that was great. That helped me immensely, because one of the ways that I really learned best is having like a paired visual and audio, and practical application. So really I need like everything. I am like the student that needs a little bit of everything. That's me. So I spent 8 weeks just learning Power BI. So like sitting down from the very beginning to the end. And that's kind of when I felt like I had a pretty good grasp of like, I could move through the program really well. I could understand what, things were asking me to do. I could kind of replicate some things. It was rudimentary, but I could do it. I could write some DAX things, even though, wow, DAX is hard. And my dad approached me and he said, do you feel like you could take this certification exam? I was like, you know what, let me look into it and I'll get back to you. Because the whole idea was, because I don't have a background in data, right? My bachelor's degree is elementary education. My master's degree is for literacy and my ESL endorsement. So everything is education based.
But when you had that conversation with your dad about the skills, and he said that you have the skills to enter the data field, what skills did you guys talk about?
It was about like the fact that I could go through something and be pretty independent with learning. I've always had an easier time with that, I would say, than maybe some other people that I know, where I can sit down and put in the time until I learn something. And only really if I'm at the point of like absolute frustration do I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? Because I am the kind of person that I like to solve the puzzle by myself, if I can. And not that I'm not good at collaboration. Like, please don't think that I love a good collaboration here. Don't get the wrong idea. I mean, I am a teacher at heart, right? But the being able to solve something on your own is so satisfying. Like, it is just like this deep, it's wonderful. It's like finding the last piece of the puzzle and putting it in. And that is like, just the best feeling.
So you mentioned that you love solving puzzles, and I was wondering, what kind of data problems do you like to solve?
So for data problems, I like when they're really kind of the nitty gritty challenging, when they're like finding the error in code is kind of an odd one, I think, to like. I mean, I'm sure there's people that feel very similarly. But I like when I have to go through and analyze something, because I'm looking for where is the mistake. And I think that also kind of comes from teaching as well, because part of it is, you're helping kids learn how to have, proper grammar and sentence structure and those kinds of things. So I think there is a lot of parallel between those two. And I like to have it be very much like the analytical side. I do enjoy putting together the reports and everything. And I like having the freedom when someone is like, this is what we're looking for, and they don't know exactly what they're looking for. But I also have a hard time with that too, because it's not my natural background. So I find that I have to ask a lot of good questions, to my clients and things, because I'm like, okay, I just want to make sure I'm giving you what you want. I don't want to, use improper time for either of us, because time is very precious. So having that, both the creative freedom, but also the analytical side, kind of put those together, and it's like the perfect happy medium for me. So it kind of is very fitting for me to have a role in data, honestly, because that I feel like these are the things that I do in, my day-to-day now, where I'm taking, this creative side and this analytical side, and I get to marry the two and create something really cool for a client. And sometimes it's, they want a strict recreation of something. I've done that before. And sometimes it's hey, this is what we're looking for. What can you make? It's really cool. It's really nice to have both.
Yeah. You did mention that you had data while you were a teacher.
Yes.
but it wasn't quite the same data that you work with now. How did your definition of data change when you went from a teacher into the data field?
Oh, yeah. So I don't know that change would be the word I would use. It's, well, I guess change, yes, but change in the way that it's used maybe is the right way to put it. Because either way I look at it, data is the backbone, right? It's the backbone of teaching. Especially now, everything is data driven. That is a huge buzzword in education, is being able to use data to drive instruction. That sentence, I cannot tell you how many times over the course of my teaching career I heard it, because it's very true. We're using these things, whether it's an observed piece in the classroom, or if it came from, let's say, a standardized testing score, and we're using those pieces to help us understand our students better, understand, where do they have maybe some holes in their learning that we can help support them so that we can close those and help them grow. And I feel like it's very similar for companies and clients as well, because it's using this data not to drive instruction, but to drive their business. And so it's to make these positive decisions based on their prior sales data, based on their prior, whatever their data happens to be based on, really, so that they can make those positive changes or positive impacts to their business, or maybe, things to highlight and be like, this was what was really working for us. We should do that again. And so I really see a lot of similarities there too. It's a very interesting change to go from education to data, because it feels very starkly different, but kind of behind the scenes, there is a lot that plays hand in hand.
So when you're presenting, say, your final product or even an iteration to one of your clients, do you see your teacher self kind of come out?
Oh gosh, yeah, all the time. Although it's different because I'm not speaking to 8, 9, 10-year-olds.
Okay.
I'm speaking to adults, which is great. And it's funny because that's always been the hardest part for me in teaching, was when I would do conferences with the families, right? That was really challenging for me because I had to go from, speaking with kids all day and using this very kid-friendly persona, kid-friendly language, to being more not professional, yes, because it's a different audience that you have, but also still bringing in my personality. I like being very animated with people. I like being very open and honest, and so that was interesting because it took me a bit to kind of learn how to have that good balance, because I wasn't going from switching from kid to adult. It was just okay, now it's only adults, so I didn't have that switch that needed to happen. So that was interesting when I took my first client, and they were very understanding. They knew that I had just switched over, and so that was helpful, because I was it's not that I'm trying to put on the kid gloves. It's just me. This is who I am. This is what I've done for the last 8 years of my life, and it takes a bit to kind of switch gears, and it helps that I didn't it wasn't mid-year or anything, so it wasn't like I was in the middle of teaching and stopped. It was, we had the summer, so we got to have summer Becca in between, so I got to be an adult and do all the things that I enjoyed, and that I was able to not feel like I had to do so much switching there, because it is almost like having a different language. Honestly, it shares a lot of similarities there, because you're dealing with a whole different audience.
Absolutely. So with your first client, did you find yourself speaking to them like they were children at first?
Not that they were like children, just more I had to find the right words to explain my thoughts. because especially, a lot of this language was very new to me. And so sometimes I would kind of do like I don't know the exact word I'm looking for. And I'd have to kind of, describe what I was thinking versus like having, one or two words that would just be able to explain like, this is what I really meant by that. And, just stopping and being like, what did you mean by this when you said this? A lot of it was just a very different vocabulary that I had to learn. So I'm still definitely learning a lot of that. And every new client that I've taken is like, I have to learn new vocabulary that goes along with it, because every company is different and they might call something slightly different than I've called it in the past. And so it's getting that comfort level again of understanding, this is what they mean by that.
Yeah.
So it's a learning process every time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even with different clients, they could be considered different audiences as well, right?
Absolutely.
So you have to tailor to each different client.
Absolutely. I've been very fortunate, I should say. I've only had one at a time. But I know most developers, that's not the case, right? It's you have, 2, 3, maybe more, depending on your hours that you have to juggle between. And that is very intimidating to me. That scares me a bit of having to juggle all of those things. It's been very nice to have it just be like, okay, I'm going to focus on this one, and, hopefully it'll continue like that for a bit. I would hope so, but we take it as it comes, and we make it work. So if it needs to be that, I have 2 at one time, then that's okay too. It just is, it'll be different, right? Because it'll have to be that switch between the 2. So I think it'll feel kind of similar to how it was when I was like going from kid to parent. So
we were talking a little bit backstage, and you mentioned some hobbies that you had that I think that contributed to you in helping you get into the data world as well. So I would like to transition into our fun bits at this time.
I love doing a bunch of crafting. So my main source is all like digital crafting. And so I have this machine called a Silhouette, which is very similar like a Cricut, if people are familiar with that. And you make like vinyl pieces, and you can have any font in the entire history of the world. You can, like have images and things that you recreate. You have the flexibility where you can like draw them yourself. I just am not very good at that. It's not my forte. And you can I can print it on like sticker vinyl. I can print it on like heat transfer vinyl, and I can make like shirts and sweatshirts and things. And so I love doing those kinds of things, especially when I have the time, which, is a little tricky to come by sometimes being a parent. But that's okay. You still find the time to do the things you love.
You squeeze it in there.
Yes. So my daughter, by the holidays this year, is going to be moving into her big girl bedroom, which is very exciting. So we've got another little one on the way in a couple weeks here. And so she's going to get booted from her current room. And I am planning on making it a Bluey themed room, because she is obsessed with Bluey, and as are we, because let's be real, anyone who knows Bluey knows that it is not a children's show. It is a show for adults that's about kids, but also about adults.
I have to admit, I have seen a few episodes, and I would agree.
It's amazing. There's like one episode that it's all about like the dad's work, and it's all about like not taking life too seriously and not taking your work too seriously. Because one of the daughters is like, she's like, no, I'm the boss. Like the older one, Bluey, is like, I'm the boss. You have to do what I say, and this is a non-dance work. And then the little daughter is a frog. Don't know why. She's just a frog, and is trying to get the dad, who now is the worker, to dance like the whole day through. And it's a non-dance work, and he's like, no, we're gonna get in trouble, don't don't make us dance. And then he ends up getting fired from Bluey because
no.
she finds him dancing. And then it's a little on the sad side. He's like outside and he's like, oh, I thought I was a good dog and no one wants to buy my drain pipes. And then the little like daughter frog, she's, pretending to be the frog, comes out and is like, no, you should just be dancing, and is like making him dance. And he's like, okay, well, I guess what do I have to lose? And he like starts dancing. And then at the end of the episode, the mom is like, oh, you have to dance with me. I am this, super famous ballerina. And then the end of the episode is, them dancing together. So in a way, it's like you go from one to the next, and, one door closes, the other one opens. And so not necessarily data related, but definitely opportunity related.
Yes, absolutely. I love watching kid shows, even though I don't have, kids myself, just because of the message that they give. It's just so adorable.
Oh yeah. We love Bluey. We're big Bluey fans in this household.
Team Bluey. Good to hear. Lots of lessons learned, definitely, that you can have from kid shows.
Absolutely. We love it.
Speaking of learning, I did want to circle back to the resources that you said that you had for any of the listeners that are trying to look to learn Power BI. Could you share any of those resources that helped you learn?
Oh yeah. So one of the biggest ones that I did, like I said, Data Camp, fabulous. It's not free, which as a teacher, big fan of free. Like I was definitely the teacher that like I would see something on Teachers Pay Teachers, which is like a huge website where teachers can like put up things that they've created and you can pay for them. But I was like, I don't want to pay for them. So I'd like find an idea from someone else and I'd be like, well, I could make that myself. And so I would. And that was generally how I would spend my summers, was like creating all these really fun things that I was like, I found this during the year, but I didn't want to spend $15 on it. It's not that much money, but like, I didn't want to spend the money when I was like, I could do it myself. So spending the money on something like Data Camp was definitely a big pill to swallow for me, because I was like, oh, I just spend money. I don't want to spend money. But it was worth it. It's a great resource. They have, so many things. They have like a whole track for Power BI. They have stuff that I've been kind of dabbling with SQL and Python, which are things that like I would have never thought that I would have ever touched. They are very challenging, at least for someone of my background, for sure. But I'm at least starting to kind of get the gist of things, which I think is at least a good, helpful kind of boost up for me. And so that was honestly kind of my number one thing, because it gave me a little bit of everything for how to help me learn best, right? It gave me the visuals with the videos, and also it gives you like a whole interactive online version of Power BI. So very helpful, very, very helpful. And it gives you like step-by-step instructions of like, this is what you're going to do next. Great. And also the auditory, because it gives you, I guess that kind of was the videos. It also gives you like hints and things if you need them. And then also the actual practical application was everything. And then after that, I would say probably my most second gone to resource was the information from Microsoft, because I was planning on taking the PL300, and I did, by the way, passed. Which was very exciting, because I did not want to have to take that more than once. And the labs that are associated with some of those readings, I think there's like maybe 8 or 10 labs or so. Those were really, really helpful, and they were free, which was great. Very similar, kind of goes through step by step of like, here's what you would expect to do in your everyday Power BI report. Let's go through those steps together. And it would be very targeted towards like whatever skill that you were reading about. So that was really helpful, especially for taking the PL300. That did give me a lot of help in my prep for that. Another one that was really helpful was There's, probably 10 or so favorite YouTube people that I found that I just thought do like a really great job explaining some of those more complicated things. Some notable would be obviously, I mean, SQL BI, the guys there, wow, they are absolutely incredible. I have never seen anyone more knowledgeable of DAX ever. I don't think there is anyone more knowledgeable of DAX than those two guys. Honestly, probably not even like Microsoft itself. Sorry, Microsoft. Also, I really liked this website that I found called Wise Owl. He also has a YouTube channel. The way that he explained things is very it felt very like similar to how I would teach my kids. So it felt very familiar, which was nice. He's kind of like goofy and sarcastic, and I just felt like an instant like jive with him, and I was like, oh yeah, I could totally see myself learning from him. And so I used his content a lot. And also there's a website where they have like, oh gosh, probably 100 plus little mini tutorials for like targeted parts of Power BI. So if it was like how to learn how to make a calculated column, right? And that goes from like very basic to more challenging. I wouldn't say it's like expert level or anything. So if you've already got kind of the background, probably may not be the best resource, but it gives you like little mini data sets where, you know, you can practice other things. That was super valuable for my learning. I would say those are kind of like my big three go-tos. Oh, and then of course, before actually taking the PL300, if anyone is like, I am gonna do it, right? Becca could do it, I could do it too, which absolutely you can. It is definitely challenging, but you could 100% do it. Do the practice exam from, I think the company is called Measure Up, and it's like the one that's connected with Microsoft, right? They make it like very similarly structured to the actual test. 100%, it is worth the money. It is a great way to extend your learning because, I mean, I went through everything so fast, right? I went from nothing to 11 weeks and I took the exam and I passed.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of those resources.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Do you have any final words of encouragement or recommendations for the listeners?
Well, I kind of already have, you know, spilled those beans of saying if I can do it, you can do it too, because it's 100% true. Give yourself the credit because you know a lot more than you know. Give yourself freedom to explore new options because it's gonna be hard to make a change, especially a big one. But like, as someone who came into this field with pretty much nothing, it's so incredibly empowering now, a year later, to look back and see how amazing like my progress has been and how much growth I've been able to do in such a short amount of time. I have gone from nothing, literally almost nothing, to now having so much more knowledge that my sister is actually starting her Power BI journey, and I have been mentoring her, which is very nice because I get to, you know, be my teacher self there. But I'm able to now explain it to somebody else and explain, you know, how to kind of go through these steps. And it's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful to try. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is that, you know, it's just not 100% the right fit, right? And then you try something else and it's okay. So give it a go. Go try it out.
Give it a go. Thank you so very much, Becca, for coming on the show with us and sharing your knowledge and resources.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. If any of the listeners had questions for you, where can they find and or follow you?
LinkedIn is probably my best place, or my email, which is rgoodman@baich, which is BAICH.com.
Thank you again for coming on the show. And as always, folks, happy learning.
Bye. Thanks again.